Yeah, yeah. Mm. I don't think she would care. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. Why? What's the holiday? It's Pride Month, I thought. All right, I'll check you later. I'll check you tomorrow. Well, if you do talk to Eddie, then I'll let him know. Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to go over. I don't want to call him this late though. So, but if you do, yeah, that's what I was hoping for. I was hoping I'd get it today and I could just call him and say we'll be over tomorrow. But I'm just now looking more like Tuesday or Wednesday, and there's no guarantee because all the deliveries are all backed up. So who the hell knows? It might not even come in this week. So, all right, talk to you later.
And the poverty of absolute deprivation that you encountered in places like Africa. But then you added another twist to it, which was you made a very, very strong case that there was a philosophy in some sense, or maybe an anti philosophy, but it boils down to the same thing, a worldview that constituted the essence of the poverty that you saw in Great Britain, which you also regarded in many ways as more severe and less addressable than the poverty that you had seen in other in the developing world, for example. So it was your combination of broad worldly experience, intense involvement with the underclass that so many people feel morally obliged to save in some sense, but actually never interact with, your experience as a psychiatrist, and then your willingness to put down these very critical and certainly politically incorrect by virtually every measure observations, which to me rang true, generally true, and which I hadn't encountered with any other thinker.
Yes. Well, I didn't really start out with any preconception, certainly not any political preconception. I just saw a lot of patients, and the penny began to drop about what their lives were like and what they expected from life. And
who did you see? Tell everyone about the nature of
I worked in an inner city hospital. The inner city hospital was right next door to the prison. And the main difference between these two great institutions was that far more violence in the hospital than in the prison. But and I would work in the morning in the hospital, and then I would go and work in the prison in the afternoon, and and often at night and weekends as well. So in the hospital, I saw maybe something in the region of I didn't count exactly, 10 to 15,000 cases of attempted suicide, or at least of suicidal gestures that varied from real attempts at suicide to attempts to bring parents to heel, everything in between. But anyway, everyone, I examined them all. When I say examined, I mean I spoke to them all, and of course they told me about the life around them. So they told me about the lives of people around them. And so in the end, I probably heard about the lives of maybe 40, 50,000 people, of course, refracted through these people's lenses. But nevertheless, though it was a selected sample of people, it wasn't a small sample of people. And so obviously I began to draw some conclusions, see some generalizations, which I didn't start with.
So we could talk about the selection for a minute. I mean, because you were working in a hospital and in the prison, you obviously saw people who were hospitalized or who were in prison. And so obviously there's a selection there, but your patients were drawn from lower socioeconomic strata, so they were poor and dispossessed, but comparatively speaking, they had got into trouble of one form or another that was sufficiently damaging so that they ended up being brought to the attention of the medical authorities because of the damage that had been inflicted on them, or prison authorities because of the damage that they inflicted on other people. So that's the selection. It would be poor people, relatively poor people, who were also in trouble. And
yes.
And you said you didn't start with political intent while you were a psychiatrist, but walk us through what you saw, if you would, and over, and what you started to conclude and why you started to communicate it.
Well, I'll deal with why I started to communicate it. Was that it was so terrible that it would that I would have found it very difficult to keep it to myself and remain sane. In fact, my predecessor in the job, I found little bottles of vodka everywhere where he went, because I think he had found it extremely difficult. It was very, very distressing. Once, for example, I kept a diary of what I saw every day, rather than mould it in a kind of literary fashion for articles. I just wrote down what I saw. And after a very short time, actually only a few days, I thought, I can't go on with this. First of all, no one would want to read it. It's just too terrible. So actually things were worse than I described in my book. Now, what I saw was a complete what seemed to me a complete social breakdown. I mean, there were almost no families in the sense of mother, father, and children. That was almost unknown in the area, practically unknown. If you asked 16-year-olds who their father is, they replied with things like, "Do you mean my father at the moment?" Or they would say, when I say, "Who is your father?" they just say, "No."
Well, I was listening to your book this morning, Life at the Bottom, at 2.5 times normal speed, and it was quite I'd read it before, but I had forgotten it's an unending litany of complete calamity across every dimension you can possibly imagine. And then you said you saw like 20,000 of people who were in dire suicidal straits. In addition, I presume that you had patients other than those who were suicidal as well.
Yes, well, mainly because I was working in a general hospital. Then I would see organic patients with organic problems and a few others.
People who'd been beaten by their partners.
Oh, I saw that was standard, of course. I mean, I discovered that about 80% of the women,
I was just telling my uncle about this guy, yeah,
whom I saw had suffered violence at the hands of one or more of their sexual partners.
Oh, we could dig in there. You tell this story that's really quite interesting. So and very, what would you say, liable, any discussion of it is liable to create controversy. So you talked about the women that you saw, the patients who chronically chose males who you could identify at a glance as extraordinarily likely to burst into violent, jealous rages and become physically violent. And you also point out that the markers for that were not precisely subtle, comparing the men that you were looking at, I believe, to your neighbor's tomcat, who had been in enough fights, so his head was a mass of shredded ears and scars and missing an eye. And so these were men who had shaved heads, multiple scars from battles, often tattooed on their fists with blatant messages of nihilism or social rejection or anger or threats or curse words or so it wasn't exactly subtle. And you said that they invariably wore an expression of malign contempt, something like that. And they were people you would obviously give wide berth to in the street in broad daylight. Yet they were invariably tangled up with a woman or two or three or 10 who they were abusing serially. And the women seemed in some sense blind to this, but not only the underclass women that you were serving, but you also mentioned that was extraordinarily prevalent among the nursing staff. And so walk us through that and tell us how you make sense of that.
Well, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was prevalent amongst the nursing staff. It was present in the nursing staff. Well, my interpretation, which would be, of course, regarded as highly reactionary, in the end, this is the conclusion I came to, was that because sexual relations had been freed from all contractual, cultural, economic restraint and constraint, then what was left was a kind of free-for-all. And the men wanted exclusive sexual possession of somebody, but at the same time they wanted complete sexual freedom. Now these things don't go together very well. I mean, if there's complete sexual freedom, okay, there's complete sexual freedom. But if at the same time you want, possibly for reasons of boosting your self-image, the exclusive sexual possession of somebody, then, and everyone around you is the same, then the men would see other men as threats. So they would become extremely jealous because they would fear any contact between their girlfriend, they were never wives, girlfriend with another man would lead to, or might lead to, a liaison. And after all, since they were sexually predatory in that way, they assumed that everyone around them was of similar ilk, and which was often true. And this used to lead to fights, for example, in so-called nightclubs, which, when I was young, a nightclub was a place where there was a floor show and little tables around, but these were great caverns of thousands of people, where if a man looked at a girlfriend, it was assumed to be a challenge by the girlfriend's boyfriend. And so there could be fights and even murder.
So I got in trouble with the New York Times because I pointed out at one point during the discussion with this journalist that societies all around the world, and I thought of this as a universal anthropological truth and something that was well established to the point of being self-evident, but apparently not, that a major problem that every society faces is the control of aggression by young men in particular, and generally as a consequence of sexual jealousy and striving. And the universal answer to that, insofar as there is one, was the development of monogamous norms and social enforcement of those norms. And, you just described it in some sense as inhibition and control, but I think it's also useful to think about it as integration and into a more sophisticated game. Being in a marriage obviously does involve not chasing after other people sexually, but it isn't all inhibitory. Within the marriage, something sophisticated and hopefully wonderful in the long term is supposed to occur as a preferable substitute, and I mean preferable if it's done properly, to the short-term gratification that might be obtained by serial relationships, say, or sporadic relationships, because they're actually very difficult, and they also produce these violent outcomes that you described. And I was pilloried for that in quite a remarkable way. Claims were made that I was making the claim that governments should hand over unwilling women to undesirable monogamous men or undesirable men just to enforce monogamy. But really what I meant was, one of the reasons for marriage, apart from the fact that two-parent families are clearly much better for children with the father there, is that societies that allow unregulated polygamy or that degenerate into that are invariably rife with extraordinarily high levels of violence.
Yes, well, that's what I saw. Now, of course, the destruction of the idea of the family as we once knew it has been a long process, started, I think, by intellectuals, literary intellectuals. And it's perfectly true that a bad marriage from which you can't escape is hell. I mean, it's a kind of concentrated hell. Marriage is not easy. So people thought, well, I think this is my explanation. They thought that there was, if we could get rid of all the inhibitions and restraints and frustrations, because there are frustrations, then the full beauty of the human personality would emerge, and we would associate with one another just by love and nothing else. And when love was over, then you just go on to something else, somebody else. But this is actually a very shallow view of things, apart from anything else. In a marriage, if there are difficulties in the way of ending a marriage, this gives you actual incentives to make it work.
It also tells you that society values what you're doing, which helps you continue to value it, which makes you more likely to stick with it during periods of doubt. I mean, obviously, life is extraordinarily difficult and just on its own, and it's certainly no easier if you're alone, that's for sure. And so life is difficult when you have a partner. And because of that difficulty, but not because of anything necessarily intrinsic to the state of marriage itself, you need social institutions to buttress the structure so that all of the weight doesn't fall on those individuals alone. I've had clients in my practice who are living together, and when I ask them why they don't get married, the man often will say, well, we don't need a piece of paper to signify our commitment. And I think, first, I've heard that 20 times, and you might think that's a philosophy, but it's actually a pretty stunningly shallow cliche. And second, we're not talking about a piece of paper here. We're actually talking about something serious. You stand up in front of your family, your peers, your friends, the people that love you, the people that you want to spend time with, hypothetically, for the rest of your life, that you're going to depend on, that are going to depend on you, and you say, look, this is important. I want you to recognize it. We're now one thing. We're going to give it our best shot, and it would be nice if you support us. And that's not trivial. It's vital. And that's still why I think marriage may be less frequent, especially among the lower classes, than it once was, although cohabiting isn't, or perhaps it is as well. But romance movies that feature
I got a lot of issues with that, but I'm not going to say anything right now. I'll talk more about that at another time too. I got to get through some of these soundtracks without keep interrupting. I don't want to keep interrupting you guys.
For example, you're not very happy with these philosophical discussions of freedom conducted by people, say, like Jean-Paul Sartre, and the absolutely catastrophic consequences of that unbridled thinking on people who are at the bottom of the hierarchy.
Yes. With regard to the piece of paper business, I remember I had a patient who had, and she was not a foolish woman, had tried to kill herself. Eventually, unfortunately, did kill herself. She wanted very much a man to marry her. And the man didn't want to marry her, but he wanted to cohabit with her. And I remember him saying to me, I don't see what she's worried about. It's only a piece of paper. And I said, well, if it's only a piece of paper, why don't you sign it? Because it's only a piece of paper either way. So obviously, this revealed that it wasn't.
Because governments fuck with you on taxes. The churches fuck with you because the churches will change their policies as they're going along, right? You got governments that will all of a sudden, because you got to remember, marriage was for family and family was to have children, and all that stuff went away because if you have two women marrying each other or two men marrying each other, their only chance of having a baby in real life, in reality, is to adopt or to artificial insemination in some cases or something along those lines. So everything has changed, and the church went right along with every shit that they had no choice. They got caught with the pedophilia under the Catholic Church for 70 years. I was in a conversation with someone the other day, and it was really great. I would love to get some of these things. I'm gonna ask him. I'm going to work on his house this week, and I'm gonna ask him if he'll let me record him. Not his face, but just record the conversations and talk about it, because he's dying. The guy that I'm talking about, he's dying, and he might not even have 6 months to a year left, and so he's been doing is telling a lot of stories about his life that he never let out before. And I know he's being honest about the stories, even more than even the stories I've already heard. He's adding to them, telling the rest of the stories. Now, one of the stories he has not told yet, I believe happened, because I'm reading between the lines over the years, is I believe he was molested by a nun, because he used to go to the Catholic schools when he was a kid, and so did all of his brothers and sisters and everything. But the beatings that he used to take, I mean, this fucking poor bastard, man. The Catholic Church, the nuns used to beat the fuck out of him. He had a lot of issues. I'll have to figure out how to do it, because one of the issues he had was saying his first and last name in Polish, and he didn't know his name in Polish. And then when he was getting beaten for not responding to his name in class, after a week of beatings and everything like that, he finally went home and confronted his father about it, and his father said, yeah, that's your name in Polish. And he's like, well, thanks for telling me. His father speaks Polish, his grandparents are Polish, and everything like that, and a lot of people in the family spoke Polish. So, he didn't, though. Him and his brothers and sisters, only a couple of them caught on to any other language, but he was young and he didn't get into it. So when you hear all the stories, and there are quite a few of them, and then he's got stories of friends and brothers and sisters also who put up with it, and they all handled it in different ways. But we're talking about being locked in a closet for 6 to 8 hours. Now, the smacks in the heads, he was talking, 10, 15 times a day during the she would just walk up, bam, smack him in the back real hard, not hard, not easy smacks, not just waving your hair or flipping your hair. I mean, these are fucking beatings. These are people that were supposed to be kind and nice and generous. You guys are talking about this marriage shit. I mean, yes, we should be together as couples and raising families and all that shit. But that's what fucked it up was the churches. That's what fucked it up was the government getting involved and making a piece of paper for it and all that. If two people love each other and they make a commitment together, let their energies be together as one, and that's all great. There's a lot of things that go along with that now that I found the system. There are a lot of things. Um, our politics, your guys' politics, your conservative ass fucking politics. Because, like I said, I mentioned before, I was a liberal douchebag growing up. Some of the women I dated, the higher class ones especially, were the conservative ones. They came from money, these conservative Republican families. Now, that was a lot of shit for me to get over as I was coming about. And I don't like to talk about personal shit because none of what I'm showing you is really about me. This is about the system and showing you the system. But if I have to fucking listen to this crap all the time, then I'm going to have to defend the other side of it. So I have to learn. I remember being just randomly here and there in my 20s, having to deal with, okay, well, we're going to this, my family's party. I'm going to have to teach you about what knife and fork and spoon and all that to use and everything like that. And I looked at her and I'm like, if anybody fucking tells me what spoon or knife I've got to use or a fork I got to use to eat my meals with, it's going to be all over. If I start getting dirty looks from anybody, I'm going to tell them to go fuck themselves over what fork I'm going to use. Are you kidding me? Not me. Not me. You guys can all play by those rules. And if you guys all want to sip your fucking soup with your soup spoon and eat, use your salad fork for your salad, that's up to you. I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want to do, right? So she was upset. She was nervous. She was worried I was going to embarrass her in front of her family. It's the same kind of shit you guys are talking about, the marriage crap. We've been screwed so badly. It's all about spending money, the economy, the diamond, the misrepresentation of the crystal, really, is what it is. Put the crystal on the finger. Put the value in the ground, and because again, the crystals, the gold, the pure heavy metals and pure minerals and the pure carbons that are everywhere. Okay, so these are the important things in life. What do? We reduce it to paper and make our money on paper. Every fucking tree, right? Every plant, we can make paper out of any. Pretty much out of most of the materials around us. Even grass could be turned into paper, dried out and turned into paper. So hemp, hemp could be used as paper. So we could be making paper bills and doing that kind of stuff like the way we do. Or we could be doing it the right way and just kept doing it the way we were doing it for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, because they were not looked at. Everything wasn't looked at as a commodity. We knew the true value of the heavy metals and minerals for our health, for our psychological health as well, and for our overall being and our electrical properties. We understood it at one time. We lost it. I don't know when. My guess is 6,000 years maybe or so. We started losing after the last reset, whenever their last major full reset was. And when I say they, I mean us. I mean we do these resets all the time. We might be due for a reset. We're being told by the rulers of the earth that we're due for a reset, and everybody just ignores it all. I was talking about it the other day again, which was the Georgia Guidestones is one good indication of what they've got intended for us, but nobody goes and takes that seriously, I guess. To stay on your marriage crap. So yes, you have to find a better way of doing it. You can't do it the way that the Christians were doing it, the Catholics were doing it, and that governments were doing it with as far as marriage goes. We should not all be together anyways, right? We all know this. So we make it into a bio argument or a bio thing, and then we throw in all kinds of human influence to fuck it all up. So even if you find two people that electrically go together, one's positive, one's negative, right? One's positive, one's negative. they can both cross. The other one can have a negative day, and the other one can have a positive day, and they will work good together. One's positive, one's negative, and they can go together and they work together. If you get two positives together, you know that it ain't gonna work, right? You know it doesn't work. And if you get two negatives together, you know it doesn't work. And I know anybody who's listening to this, you don't have to have any intelligence to know what I'm talking about. We all experience this. From childhood, we start experiencing this with our friends. We're attracted to, electromagnetically attracted to other people's energies, so we'll befriend them, and then several other people we will not befriend them. That it's not the right energy. We'll know them, we'll talk to them, we might even grow to like them, but we're not going to ever share our energy together, right? So we already knew that this was all going on. We ignored it, and what we did is put all these bullshit rules that go against anything that would be considered natural, right? So one of the girlfriend that I'm talking about with the telling me what silverware to use at a dinner party, that same girlfriend, a great girl. I mean, I still love her to this day, and I hope things are going well for her. But the shit, it was because we had a matching energy. The positive and the negative. I was negative. She was probably positive. I would say more or less. But we had a good energy. The connection was excellent. But all of the surroundings of our human society was not going to let us be together, and we both could feel it, and we both knew that. That's why it only lasted a couple of years. You know, I think about a year and a half, 2 years or something it lasted. And then it went on for a little while afterwards, you know, a part-time, let's try to make it work type thing, you know, but it wasn't real. Um, so all the things and I believe me, there's a lot of bad about me. I did a lot of bad shit. I was a pig. I used to be looking at girls all the time. But one thing I did not do with her, because I at that time still hadn't ever cheated on anybody. I didn't cheated on anyone yet. I didn't do any cheating on anyone, even though I was a pig and I thought about it all the time. I never acted on it due to the mirror neuron. I knew how it would feel if the person found out or whatever. But I thought about it all the time. That's for sure. And then it always turned out every time I broke up with somebody over the years, I'd find out later that they cheated on me with like two people, another one, 4 or 5 people over a couple year period. If I was with them together for 2, 3 years, it gave them the opportunity. Then you'd always find out after the fact, and I'd be like, oh man, that sucks. Not only was I pissed that I got cheated on, but I was pissed because I passed up the opportunity to sleep with some girls that I really wanted to, sleep with, and I'd pass it up, Um, and then, of course, later in life, I finally gave up on the not cheating thing and said, fuck them all, because they're all full of shit. They're all a bunch of fucking liars. They're all fucking cheat on me every time chance they get, and then they act like they got halos over their fucking head. And the other thing is when they come from the upper crust, when they're the higher end families, I don't know, they consider their cheating to be cleaner than the dirty fucking poor people's cheating, I guess, or something. I don't know. But it's really the same kind of cheating. Cheating is cheating, right? But if they're the upper crust, they think that that it's forgivable or something, or that it's okay for them to do and acceptable, and they make up excuses. It again goes back to their church too, because the Catholic Church, more than any of them, is bad for that too. If you're gonna cheat on your spouse, you go fucking say confession. To tell you to say a few Hail Marys, and go on about your business, right? Um, so that same girl that used to lecture me for looking at other girls if I did, or something like that. And believe me, I had a lot of issues. I'm just not going to get into them. I was an asshole myself, no doubt about it. And she wasn't. She was not an asshole. According to society's rules, she was doing everything right, and I was doing everything wrong. The constant beatdown that I would have to get, and I'd have to fight it off. I still do in my life about other things that are similar to those days, but I'm much better at fighting them off. I'm older. I know better. I don't let things bother me. I would compare it almost to like the way that women were looked down upon for choosing to stay home with the kids when that was more acceptable. Now today, that would not be acceptable. So for men to stay home with their kids and work from home or do something like that, it's not acceptable. It never has been, and it never will be, as far as I can see. So I have to fight off that. That's one of the things I'm talking about. But she used to do that and fill me up with guilt about pretty much everything. You would drive up in me anyway, drive up in my $1,500 car, and I'd be surrounded by cars that would cost me 3-4 years salary. Now these people obviously made double what I made, and sometimes even more so, and therefore they could drive these nice cars and everything. So they expect the same out of me. I wasn't looking for that in life. I didn't. It wasn't a matter of not wanting to work that hard to get those things. It's that I came from a middle class poor family, and those things were not going to happen for me. I was not going to. The only way I could be doing. I've seen friends do it. Don't get me wrong. I've seen them do it, but they later probably committed suicide, those friends that did that. I didn't keep in touch, but there's no fucking way. The stress is unbelievable. I mean, when you're making $30,000-$40,000 a year, and you're driving $100,000 vehicle and living in a $500,000 home because they were stupid enough to give you the loan for it, and you're living in the credit card debt is up the ass because you're buying a new wardrobe every other day so that you can keep up with the Joneses, right? You're not really keeping up with the Joneses in that case. That would have been my case if I would have tried doing that with the girl that I'm talking about. And others as well, but she was just one particular one that she came from a wealthy family, and that was the way that it was going to be. So the marriage, how the hell am I going to marry her? It would have cost, my family certainly couldn't have afforded it. Her family would have afforded the marriage, but they certainly would not have wanted her to marry me. So were we really being honest with each other when we said, we're going to live together, we're going to love each other, we're going to always be together forever? We really both knew that that was not really honest, because we knew that the economic balance was way off. Now, did she wish that I would triple or quadruple my income so that I could keep up with that? Maybe. But I looked at that as a egotistical, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read the book, okay? Another girl from besides her made me read that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because her father highly recommended it for me at that time, to try to show me, to explain to me what the things that the book explained, and which I already knew. Maybe some of it I was not willing to accept, but the book, just like everybody else, just like you guys are doing now, I always fail to look at from outside the box. They never want to go to outside the box. They only give you the sides that are available in front of us, all the sides that they want to lay out for you. No one ever offers something else. Like what I'm trying to do for you guys is my point. What I'm trying to show you is that there's something other besides the God that you were told about, but it's kind of like that. There's something that's kind of like the Matrix that Keanu Reeves turned you on to, but it's not really exactly that. It's something that's kind of a little bit like the holographic system that you're being now brainwashed into, programmed into believing that the system is, but it's not really exactly that. So what I'm trying to show you is a whole nother side that offer you all the evidence for all these different sides can all come together as one, because you can see it all now. So if you go look at it and see it for what it is and stop using your imaginations, you're going to fucking see it, and we can move on from here. Again, do we really, by that time, once you know that utopia is right in front of you, you may not really want utopia. Utopia might not be as great of a thing as we claim that it is, but at least we'll know. At least we'll know as we're heading there to say, whoa, we don't even want that much happiness in our lives. We don't want that much peace. We like to be, aroused and little. And that might be one of the reasons why we sold out in the first place. Why our ancestors sold us out like this, I have no idea. I'm hoping that they were dumbed down before they sold us out. They might have dumbed them down right after one of the resets. Like, let's say they got together, had a reset, and then as we've started to repopulate the earth, they immediately started dumbing us down right away, you know. So that's most likely what happened. And dumbing us down meaning putting a fucking college on every corner, putting a church on every corner, putting a school on every corner, indoctrinating the shit out of us, turning our parents into fucking liars to lie against and go against what we can see with for ourselves with our own eyes, teaching parents as the leaders of these marriage certificates that you're so pushing right now, that you guys are pushing this. What am I out of? No, 40 minutes. You guys are pushing the marriage certificate crap. Jordan, I hope the hell you come to these videos. I really hope you come to these videos. And I hope you look, because no matter what's coming out of my mouth, no matter what I say to you, I don't have to say these words for you to know everything that I'm saying. All you have to do is go look at the system. Look at it in the clouds, the rocks, the stones, the ice, the water, the moon, the trees, and human skin. Start there. Start there. And then as you look, it won't take you even half as long as it took me to see everything that I see. And I don't have it all figured out. I'm not saying I do. But I'm certainly not rushing it anymore either. I'm not rushing to see more. I just stay calm, as it comes. I take it as it comes. And it just seems like every day, every week, every month. And then I am allowed little breaks here and there that I'm not forcing. I'm not forcing the breaks. I just take it if it comes. And I just happen to notice that here and there I'm offered little breaks. Sometimes these breaks come from the enemy. It comes from being shut down on YouTube, or getting frustrated because my videos are getting deleted, and I say, fuck that, I ain't even gonna bother today, things like that. And then I get my break, right? And then all of a sudden a week later I feel better, and I'm like, okay, I'll go back to it or whatever. But yeah, the marriage shit, yes, there's a reason for families and all that stuff, but let's get to the real reasonings, and let's stop, blaming one side, because the Republican side that claims that those things are good, and then most people are supposed to argue and say, yeah, that's true, it is, we do kind of miss that, marriage was a nice thing, and everybody got along and everything. Well, there's a lot to that. There's a lot to that on both sides, right? So we could say that the man had the right because he was running the show, so he could go off to work. Where the majority of affairs happen? At work. We all know this, right? So women didn't know that and until they got to work. I don't think so. So the women that were going to work, and it's not every man, but for the most part, they knew that they could do that. There was something exciting happening at work, gave them a reason to want to go to work every day, that kind of thing. And that was happening for years. Then women joined the workforce. So when women joined the workforce, then both of them were now having affairs at work all the time. So of course things got harder and harder and worse as far as all that goes, right? As a matter of fact, the girl that I'm talking about, the high-end one, I caught her towards the end of the relationship. Like I said, we were a couple of years into it. And I had my instincts that something was going on and all that, but then what happened was she was always a person to talk in her sleep, and a couple times I was still awake, and she fell asleep early, and I just remember one time, it was funny because she has conversations with people in her sleep, so it was daily things and stuff like that. But usually it would be something stupid, Hey, where'd you put those paper clips? That kind of thing. Oh, they're in. Where's that file for? And then she would name someone's name, and I so you could tell it was specific, and it was recent. It wasn't like she was having a dream about a childhood memory or something. So, anyways, one day, I'm laying there in bed with her, and she's already passed out, and she starts talking to somebody, and she's saying, yeah, I'm only going to be with him until I graduate, because I was paying for her college education. She was going to school for psychology. You fucking therapists, you guys are really something. But anyway, she was going to be a psychologist, and I was helping her with that, and I was supporting her so she could get to school. So she was talking to this dude in her dream, and talking about how she's going to dump me as soon as she's done with school, and she's only got another 6 months left, and all this kind of shit, and 6 months left, and so I started playing on it, which I'd done before, because I'm pretty I'm a scumbag myself. So I started playing on it. I started talking to her in her dreams. And I've done it before, like I said, over little things, but this one was more interesting. And I was about 10, 15 minutes into a full conversation with her about me, her thinking that I was whoever it was in her, and I was trying to get that out of her, who it was. And it ended up being some guy, that a computer repair guy, that she was seeing at work, to fix her computers and shit like that. So I knew she had been talking to him on the phone and that kind of shit. So once I put it all together with what she told me in the dream, I confronted her with it the next morning. And she didn't have much to say about it. I did, I said that, you know. Um, and I got a pretty lot out of it. So I should have walked right there and then, because I knew it was coming, right? I had the evidence I needed, and I should have left at that moment, but I didn't. And it was only, I don't know, a month or two later that one day she came home at like 1, 2 in the morning after the bars closed. And no phone call, no nothing, stuff like that. So by the time she came home, I mean, I'm an asshole too. So I had all her shit packed up. Everything that she had in the apartment was all packed up and ready to go. And we separated that evening, that night. I think I slept on the couch or whatever, and then left the next morning and got another apartment the next morning. Um, and I didn't even wait to finish the old lease or anything. I just got the fuck out. So, marriage certificates, proof of marriage, in the eyes of who? Do we get married in the eyes of God? Do we get married in the eyes of the state? Do we just respect each other and be with each other electrically? You know?